Buenas tardes a todos. Good afternoon. My name is Abelardo de la Peña Jr. I'm the Director of Marketing and Communications with La Plaza de Cultura y Artes, welcoming you to tonight's En Casa con La Plaza. As you know, En Casa con La Plaza's virtual programming. We've been at it since April of 2020, all during the pandemic, during the lockdown, and even as we're opening up, we're going to continue these virtual programs to bring you the best of our community's art, history, and culture. If you've joined us on Zoom, welcome. Use the chat feature. Let us know where you're viewing from. Use the Q&A feature as well. We'll take questions, maybe during, maybe after, but we will definitely take the questions and we might even answer them. If you're on Facebook, thank you as well for joining us. Let us know where you're viewing from. Use the comment feature. Let us ask questions, make comments, do shout outs. We welcome those as well. Tonight's program. Oh, first of all, our sponsors. Thank you to Kaiser Permanente and PepsiCo, who kindly sponsored this evening's program. La Plaza de Cultura y Artes. We opened our doors on April 16, 2011, after years of planning, organization, and construction. Tonight, we'll be joined by Gloria Molina, retired LA County Supervisor of the 1st District, and Miguel Santana, President and CEO of the Weingart Foundation, two of the key individuals who advanced the idea of a Mexican-American museum and cultural center on what it took to make La Plaza a reality. So with that, let me welcome Gloria and Miguel. Please join us on En Casa con La Plaza. If you could please unmute.
There we are.
All right. Hello, Gloria, how are you?
Just fine. How are you doing, Abelardo?
Doing well, thank you. How about yourself,
Good.
Miguel? How are you tonight?
Great. It's great seeing you, Abelardo.
All right. Well, thank you so much. Little full disclosure here. Miguel and I were colleagues back in the day at the Mexican American Legal Defense Educational Fund. I think that was one of your first jales, your first jobs, wasn't it, Miguel?
That's right. I was 22 years old. It was 30 years ago.
Man.
Wow.
And Gloria, I believe you were on the board of directors at the time.
I was on the board of directors. I noticed Miguel, and then I stole him from Antonia, and I brought him over to my office.
All right. And Antonia Hernandez, then President and General Counsel of the Mexican American Legal Defense and Educational Fund.
Correct.
All right. Well, we're going to go back, take a stroll down memory lane, and really talk about the origins of La Plaza de Cultura y Artes, what the idea was behind it, how the site was selected, the whole journey until the public opening, which was 10 years ago, just last month. So let's start it off. Gloria, tell us about, you were working as a supervisor at the time, elected as the first Latina, the first supervisor of the LA County board, and tell us about the concept. What was behind it?
Well, it started, I'm very proud that we're now celebrating 10 years, but actually it started many years, probably 15 years ago, as far as actually starting to work on it. But the idea and the concept is something from way, way back. I remember Esteban Torres talking about it, the congressman talking about a place like that, where we would have a location, a go-to location, where we would share who we are and so on, and have museums. And I remember Antonia Hernandez working with Frank Cruz years ago when we tried to acquire Lowry's, the old Lowry's, for such a cultural center. Anyway, there was a tremendous amount of need. And I'm embarrassed to say that as far as the location was concerned, it was really a bad place for us. We had homeless going into the old Brunswick building. We had to tear down the old courthouse that was in the back. It was a really a disgraceful site. We'd been criticized from time to time about the site. I had tried very hard to give it away, and basically no one was willing to take it because of the work that needed to be done. And then finally, when we had talked about creating a place like La Plaza, and was convinced, although it took a lot to convince me because I wanted to build a new building, is to take on this building. The CAO was supportive. They were willing to build it out for us. As usual, I knew it was going to cost so much more for a rehab of this type, but really putting together the whole concept and the whole idea took really years of coming together. We brought together its first board to talk about the concept. And what we really wanted was a place where we could share our contributions as Mexicanos, as Latinos to Los Angeles. If you look at every great city in this country, it has a founders museum. Los Angeles does not. And I think there's a lot of history as to why not. But the reality is we knew that we had a lot to offer. We had a lot to share as far as us telling our own history, certainly sharing the contributions of what we had done and contributed to this great city. And then sharing, of course, our culture and our history, our customs, traditions, and celebrations. And then, of course, most of all, our food, which is one of the best things that we have. But there was so much that we were so proud of, and we were happy to do it. So that's how we got started. It was very, very bumpy along the way. It was tough. Not only putting together the money, but dealing with the site, putting together the kind of staff and programming. When I look back, I mean, there were times that we thought this was never going to happen. And I look back now and look at the wonderful program and the people that are involved every single day in making Plaza as great as it is. All I can say, it was worth all of that effort. But believe me, there were times, and Miguel can share, the difficulties of trying to make this what it is. And it is one of the county's museums. And so we're very proud of that.
All right. Well, I'm going to go ahead and just share the screen here with some of the photographs. Gloria spoke of the site. The La Plaza de Cultura y Artes is located in two buildings. One is the Vickery Brunswick building, built in the 1880s, I believe. The first 5-story building in LA, so it could be considered the first skyscraper. And so you see it right there on the right, Brunswick Drug Company. It was originally built as a pharmaceutical industry. And then right next to it was a Plaza House, then called the Plaza Hotel, the 2-story building right next to it, which featured the first skylight in downtown. So very historic buildings, but as Gloria was saying, quite old. So that was one of the challenges of rehabilitating the buildings. So tell us, Miguel, what was your role in the process of the founding, the site selection, or the working with getting the building constructed, with the organization development? So tell us about your role, please.
So I worked for the supervisor, and part of my job was to support these kinds of initiatives and to help put the structure together to build larger support for it. I think Gloria gives a great summary of the process, but keep in mind that at the very beginning, it's hard to believe today that a big part of what Gloria had to do, and Congressman Torres and Antonio Hernandez and the core group of founders of La Plaza, was to convince the community that yes, Los Angeles should have a museum that celebrates the Mexican American origins of this community. There was not a consensus about that. There was some criticism that we would hear from folks saying, well, this is Los Angeles belongs to everybody. Why should we talk about one community? And I think a big part of what Gloria did, and what the leaders who were really visionaries, is to establish a clear vision that was grounded in history. Our community's relationship to this place is unique. And there are a few places that really talk about that. The name of Los Angeles is rarely talked about. Like, where does that come from? Why is Figueroa named Figueroa? Who was the last Mexican governor? And, as one of the things that Gloria and the founders emphasize is that you can't move forward as a community if you don't acknowledge your past and celebrate it. And remind folks that we've been here all along. We didn't just get here. And that in fact, LA's history is our history and our history is LA's history. And so, my role as a young staffer to the supervisor and supporting in whatever way I can was to help work with the bureaucracy to convince them that this was important. Work closely with the various departments. The first thing we had to do is end a lease that we had with the person who neglected those buildings and allowed them to deteriorate. We had to convince the Board of Supervisors that that was an important step. And then after that is work with the preservationist community to negotiate what could and could not be built. But it took really the leadership and the vision of Gloria and the core leaders to really explain why this was important. And there were most people never thought it would happen. A lot of people were hoping it wouldn't happen, quite frankly. But there was a lot of tenacity in it. It took advocacy. It took building a coalition. And getting support from the merchants in our Placita Olvera, getting support from the city of Los Angeles to make it happen.
All right, and Gloria, so like as Miguel was saying, it was a bureaucratic process. It was also
Right.
a political process in getting the support of. So tell us how that worked out in convincing your fellow supervisors and all the departments within the county to make this happen.
Well, again, I needed to have my colleagues join me in supporting it. It doesn't happen all by itself. I was fortunate to have gathered some money together for a community center and for the arts and things of that sort. So I had some money set aside. And so once we started talking about convincing the CAO, looking at the possibility of whether this building could happen or not, estimating what the cost was, and then again going to the Board of Supervisors and convincing them that this should be done and that it could be done. Luckily, again, they didn't think I could get it done, but there was support. And a lot of it had to do with really putting everything in place before and really being, I think, thoughtful about how we were going to approach it, having the money in place and really getting the support all the way. But it was very, very tough, only because I think there were people who probably thought, they're not going to openly oppose it, but it'll never get done. But we were very dedicated, very persistent. Believe me, there were a lot of steps along the way where we thought we weren't going to get it, whether it was the funding, whether it was the incapacity of renovating the building, whether, again, the preservation community was going to be supportive of us or not. Really, there were just so many pitfalls all along the way. But again, at the end of the day, it really was something we're very proud of. And I had, at that time, put together a board of people who had gone through this process, were very political, and who understood clearly and brought with them a group of supporters as well, who understood the importance of a facility of this type. But and keep in mind that it did receive a very, very large startup grant and contract that it has, just like our other facilities, whether it's LACMA, the Natural History Museum, the Music Center, and so on. So we're in the same framework as many of those facilities. And I think now that when they look back, I think they should be very, very proud of La Plaza, not only because of what it's doing every single day, but that those supervisors are also a part of it and making it happen.
All right. So as you were saying, the construction or the rehabilitation, or getting all these parties together, the conservation community, the merchants, that was a big challenge. The building itself took a while to turn it into what it is now. And so here's a photograph of during the construction, as you could see, the Vickery building there. And then it also, we had to gut basically a lot of the structure, using some of the existing material, but really giving it some lighting. The foundation needed work. You know, a lot of things needed to take place in order for it to be livable.
Right. I think that
move-in.
Miguel, Abelardo, I think Miguel can share with you more. I was really hesitant to go into the building. The homeless had been in, they started a fire. So most of the floors had burned down. It was almost just a shell. And it's a brick facade. It's a brick building. So those V's in there that you see of metal, that's what's holding up the building. And so it cost about twice as much as it needed to cost in a building of this type in order to renovate it. And I thought that at the end of the day, those things were going to be real barriers to our programming and our capability. And I really constantly was concerned about the cost and concerned about what's going on. But really, at the end of the day, it's a great location where we're at. The building has turned out very beautiful. We have this wonderful green space and all, but Miguel can tell you all of the aches and pains of going through there and looking at a building that was pretty much gutted and trying to renovate it with the preservationists looking over our shoulders constantly.
Well, I think part of the issue here is that, you know, one of the tensions that the board talked about at the time is this about a building or is this about a program? And Gloria was always the strongest advocate for this is about the program. I don't care what the building looks like. I care about what happens inside of the building and what you learn and experience. And it frankly could be in a box. It doesn't, the building isn't what should draw people to it. There was another group that also felt, well, the building is part of the story. And we had one board member, Doug Ring, of course, who is no longer with us, who as a developer understood what it meant. So he really was very helpful in shepherding a lot of the difficulties of the process of going through the conservationists, going through environmental processes, doing all the soil testing, going through all the required permitting, working with contractors, all of that. We were fortunate as part of the team, we had someone like Doug who understood those issues very clearly. But there's one thing that's also very important that makes this sustainable for the future and was part of the insistence that Gloria had at the time. And that is that this museum be at the same standing as other museums that the county subsidize. Today, you know, we talk about equity in a way that it's natural and it's sort of, there's a consensus that there should be equity in how government supports everything, including the arts. 15 years ago, that wasn't the case. And there was a concern that why should the taxpayers subsidize a museum that talks about the Mexican American experience, right? And at the same time, the taxpayers subsidize other venues where the majority of the population doesn't really experience in the same way. And so Gloria made a very convincing case to her colleagues that not only should the county be in the business of supporting building this structure, but it is in the county's interest in the way it supports all the arts to ensure that it is around for the next 100 years. And that is what makes this place embedded into the fabric of Los Angeles, and that in fact, it will be around for the next 100 years in the same way that the Natural History Museum will be, and the Hollywood Bowl and Disney Hall and the network of cultural venues that LA County is so proud of.
So
Absolutely.
go ahead, Gloria.
No, absolutely. I mean, that was the key, is to really create something that was high quality. I mean, we always wanted from day one to have a place where the Smithsonian would be sharing their exhibits. And so we needed to have that high standard. We had brought on Andrea Rich into our initial board, and we talked about what the quality of this facility should be from the standpoint of the high standards of programming and so on. And so it was really essential that it be a first-class facility for our community, which it truly is today. But it was important that everyone understood. And again, it is going to have the lasting power because we built a really solid foundation from the very beginning, not only putting it on the same equal footing as the Music Center or LACMA or the Natural History Museum by having a contract with the county, as the others do as well, to maintain and sustain a certain portion of it. We have to do our fundraising and we have matching responsibilities to it. But also to have the kind of a facility that a community was going to really be educated, and not just our community, because when we look at what's going on in our classroom and the history, we know that our history is not being shared there enough, and we know how important it is for young people to know their own history and to be proud of who they are. And I think they are proud in their own family, but they don't see that. It certainly isn't always at LACMA. It is sometimes, from time to time. It isn't in the Natural History Museum. So we needed to produce such a place, and it had to be of quality and high standards, which I think we've achieved tremendously. And it has a real national standing that I'm very proud of. But we did a lot. We visited other facilities. We went to San Jose, San Antonio. We went to DC. We looked at other facilities. We looked at options of creating a theater. We looked at various budget models. So we were very intense so that we built a very solid foundation so that when hopefully it would be so solid that it would have sustainability for decades. And I think it will.
No, in fact, one of our Pete Carrillo, one of our viewers on Zoom, he says, Supervisor, I remember your visit to San Jose to tour the Mexican Heritage Plaza located in East San Jose.
Right.
That's to Pete Carrillo. So yeah, so you needed to make those visits to do the research, because while on this side, you did have a building to contend with, the rehab, the structure, but you also had to construct a programming of not just art on the walls, but also you've included education, you've included a garden, outreach programs. How within the board was that decided prior to the opening?
Well, there were different iterations. Miguel remembers we used to put these little notebooks together of the kinds of things we wanted to see, but we really wanted people to come in and have a feeling, a positive feeling of who our community was. It started out with identity and dealing with the fact that we're of all colors and all backgrounds, and then going through the real basics of our beginnings here with the indigenous people that were in California. We weren't here first, so we needed to showcase that and make that and be proud of that and own that as well, and then talk about the history, certainly the pobladores that were here, and move it forward, but understanding clearly that all of the time we were going to be talking about our history, but also celebrating who we were, our challenges that we had along the way, the farm worker struggle, our political struggle, the Zoot Suit riots, things of that sort. In education, the Mendez case, and all of these kinds of things, to remind young people along the way that you've always come from a group of ancestors that have fought hard on your behalf to make it better for you. And then, of course, we always have celebrated the arts and loved the arts tremendously. And we wanted to have the arts sprinkled throughout that. And of course, the garden was a very important thing for us because, again, we wanted to teach our children, that, the tomato just isn't at the grocery store. I mean, you can grow it, your chile and so on. And it's become part of our programming. And it's so vital. We wanted to make sure that it was something that a family could come to, spend the day there, and there would be something for mom and dad, there'd be something for the kids. But the programming was really essential, and it still is every single day. There is so much. In fact, I can't imagine how we make a decision of what we're going to show in the next 2 to 3 years, because there's so much we want to do and so many people that bring us such tremendous ideas.
Well, the accessibility that Gloria talks about was a central idea, that it had to reflect the diversity of our community, and it had to be welcoming to all of our communities, from our abuelitas to young children. Everyone should feel like the place belongs to them and should learn in a mode that speaks to them. And I think the La Plaza has done a phenomenal job in being accessible. The other idea that was so critical that was in our mission statement from day one is that it should be the center of Latino culture and life in Los Angeles. And so one of the things that it has become is that, you know, when we were able to meet in person, you know, so many different Latino organizations have had the galas there. People celebrate their weddings. It's become a gathering place where you see your friends and at the same time learn something. And of course, you know, really celebrate our music, our art, our culture, our food. There are really no places like that in Los Angeles where it is intentional. It is by design that you're going to learn, even when you're not expecting it, that you're going to learn something in a way that's honest, that, you know, that it's honest. We talked about Chavez Ravine before, you know, suddenly everyone's talking about it. But at the same time, it wasn't about making us feel less than or feel that we are somehow that didn't celebrate our endurance and our resilience as a community. And I think from that standpoint, I think La Plaza has really captured that mission.
No, and that's one thing that we do hear a lot from visitors, especially first-time visitors, is when they come to La Plaza, they learn something about our history that they had not heard of, much less learned in school. And I'm sure that was intentional. But how were those decisions made as to what to showcase and what to kind of have to leave out due to the space restrictions within the building itself?
Well, again, that was a board decision as we started narrowing down. We certainly wanted to have a place where kids that were in elementary school and middle school would come and visit and get an idea of the beginnings when we were there. And that's why you see that one floor that's totally dedicated to the kids. They go through it, and it's, you know, kind of what the building was in the 1920s with the old photography shop, the record shop. We really create an experience for the kids to be a part of it. But we really wanted to have a history as well of who we were in Los Angeles and talk about those challenges that were there. But at the same time, as Miguel said, how we persevered and we've come out of it stronger and better as a community. We wanted it to be a place where we were really talking about who our central part of our character is, and that is that we are very, very resilient. We're about family and coming together, and I think it really has been that, and that's why it was really important also to put together the outside open space that we have to, you know, our families like to get together in their backyard and celebrate, but also our cocina, because it's where everybody comes together in the kitchen, in the cocina, sharing, you know, grandmother's tortillas and the recipes and so on. So we really wanted to bring that sense of the values that we have within our families into this facility and share it with everyone else, because that's who we are as a community and as a group of people. And yet at the same time, present and educate them along the way. And so it took a lot of iterations over and over, deciding as to how we were going to put it together. And at certain points, there was so much that we couldn't do. We couldn't do as much we wanted to do in the arts because of the limited space. We couldn't do a lot of the galleries. So it's going to be our third phase. We said that initially we would create the historic aspect of it with the building that we have today. We were going to build our cocina, which is now across the way at the Plaza Village, which is also part of our development, which is our endowment. for the future. And I'm really hoping, maybe not in my lifetime, to really build the arts building, because this is the home of Chicano art. And I would love to see us all, take all of the great artists from past and future and really have an opportunity to showcase their work, to have an opportunity to have workshops and things of that sort. There's so much talent in our community that doesn't have an opportunity to get the showcasing that it should have.
All right. Well, one of the challenges during the construction itself, and I'd be remiss not to bring it up because one of our emailers brought it up, was in the construction, the unearthing of some bone fragments that was kind of caught the everyone unawares. But how was it resolved?
Well, let me just share very quickly that we knew that there was a cemetery next to the church. We had looked it up, and we were told that there is a cemetery that was built next to the church, of course, ages ago. We had talked to the Catholic Church, and they had told us they had removed all of the bodies and so on. But we had always wanted to create a Camposanto that we said we would honor and have a facility of that type. Well, as we were constructing, regrettably, as we were digging up for our water and so on, we came across the bone fragments, and my gosh, it was an unbelievable storm, because we had the indigenous community come down on us that we were violating their tribal, and ceremonial grave sites, and it was very, very painful. We had to work closely with many of the indigenous groups. We had to go before tribal council. We had to do a lot of documentation. We had to bring in various folks that documented a great deal of the history and the background of it and make the conclusions that we did. And of course, where we were going to put the Camposanto is where the entrance is right now, the brick entrance, the facade entrance that we have on the side. We were going to build something on the other side there. And so where the Camposanto is now, or where the cemetery is now, is where there was potentially and that's where the old Plaza building was at. So they had built on it way back then, but that is where most of the bone fragments were found. And so we wanted to honor that, and we've continued to honor it. And it was part of an agreement that we made with the various indigenous communities that are represented today. I don't know that we made them totally happy, because they would have rather that we would have left it all alone. But I think we pay proper tribute to the ancestors there. It is still it's a beautiful, we don't do much with it. It's sort of natural plantings that are there. And we have, of course, the fence around it with some very powerful words that inspire us, to remind us of our ancestors and our beginnings in LA. But believe me, at a point in time, it looked like we weren't going to get through that process. But at the end of the day, there was, again, a lot of perseverance from a lot of our board members that dedicated themselves to make it happen. And finally, we got the approvals that we needed to move forward and complete the construction of the building.
Well, Antonia Hernandez in particular played a leadership role here. I think what's important about this story is that it's part of the story, and that La Plaza actually leaned in and said, we need to tell this story about what happened here. Because keep in mind that, as Gloria indicated, there was a lot of documentation and archaeologists that did a lot of the work prior to the first shovel going into the ground. And the church said there were no remains left. There was an actual building built on top of the cemetery. And for over a century, this was not discovered. And so part of the story, part of our story of our community, is how even our grave sites were so dismissed that buildings were built on top. And so when we discovered this, we felt we had to do the right thing We had to work with, we wanted to find the descendants if possible, work with the indigenous communities. And most important, tell that story because it's what ultimately the mission of La Plaza is. So we acknowledge that this is part of the story of Los Angeles as much as anything else.
All right, thank you. No, and it was something that needed to be done, and now once a year the community does, the native people, the Tongva community in particular, comes every year to do a small commemoration at the site. So as you say, it was resolved. It's a story that needs to be told, and it is still being told.
Right.
So finally we get to, after millions of dollars of construction, rehabilitation, and then the programming, put together the team that was going to lead La Plaza and curate, educate, take care of the facilities was put together. Then finally on April 11th was a gala opening. So I'm going to share screen here to that the opening celebration, the ribbon cutting. So who do we have here?
It says we have Esteban, the congressman. Proud to have him there.
And was he the chair of the board at the time?
I don't know. Was Esteban the chair, Miguel? I don't remember.
No, you were the chair.
Yeah, but he had been a part of it from the very, very beginning. And he, like I said, he was someone that inspired me to do this because he had talked about a place like this, decades before when I knew him. But Antonio was there as well, who was the mayor at the time. And we had a wonderful gala and a wonderful opening. And it was nice to celebrate.
Oh yeah, well here we have a photo of you addressing the crowd on a beautiful April spring day, and here we have the actual ribbon cutting.
Oh, fabulous! Yeah.
So how did that feel on that day when it finally came together?
Well, believe me, I was very grateful that it was done. I was pleased that it was done, but I knew that our challenges were still ahead of us, and that is maintaining the facility, continuing it, fundraising for the facility, creating the kind of programming that was going to be dynamic, that was really going to be something that people would really admire and respect, not only in our community, but as a museum. And so we knew there were challenges ahead of us, but at least we had gotten to that step. And we didn't get to that step easily. It had been a lot of work before that, but now we needed to move forward and really, not only we had to make sure that we were going to be successful. There have been many instances where this has been tried in the past, where nonprofits are started, people do this kind of work. We saw that a little bit in San Jose, where they weren't able to maintain it like they wanted to maintain it. We had seen facilities in other areas that, it was hard. And so we knew that there was some challenges ahead of us as far as putting everything together in place. That's why it's so wonderful to look back now and celebrate 10 years and of course to celebrate great things like this wonderful grant that you just got from the Getty. Congratulations.
Thank you. Yes, a recent announcement by the Getty on an initiative that they have to really uplift arts and cultural organizations, and La Plaza de Cultura y Artes was one of the very fortunate receivers of some unrestricted funds. And so yes. Thank you for that. Miguel, what do you remember of that day when you had the gala celebration ribbon cutting?
I have 4 daughters, and my daughters call La Plaza my 5th daughter because I've spent so much time, and they've given me some of the ganas that I have come from La Plaza, because it was more than a job. It was really a passion for me. It was contagious. The vision that Gloria and Esteban and Antonia had was contagious. I was particularly proud about Calle Principal because I remember taking my kids to different cities throughout the country. There's always a children's museum there. I remember advocating for creating a space that was really designed for them. and kind of that looked at the world from their perspective. And to see it in real life, to see the kids running around in the grocery store and taking a picture and learning about music, it was just amazing to really see a vision materialize and getting the community to react to it so warmly. I mean, I can't tell you how many folks I've heard tell me how meaningful it is for them to have a place where they see themselves that celebrates our culture, our history, our contributions. I heard it from a member of my staff just recently who said if they had a visitor coming from another part of the country, they would take them to La Plaza because it tells the LA story, which is our story. So that day was very special because it really was the hard work and the sweat and tears that it took to make it happen all came together.
All right. Well,
Let me just add,
go ahead, Gloria.
real quickly, because I think it was also a celebration for my staff. They had gone on this journey with me for 5 or 6 years before the grand opening, and they were involved in making sure the money was there. And there are people like Alma Martinez that was a part of it, Aviana Uribe that was a part of it, Nicole England that was a part of it. All of my staff people, my secretary,
Carrie
yeah.
Sutkin.
Carrie Sutkin was a big part of it. All of them were a part of every single day, and there were such struggles. And I really, I mean, Miguel talks about the passion that it took. There was passion, but there was also sometimes an awful lot of pushing that needed to be done. And my staff, I think that day was so grateful to see it happen because they all had worked so very hard to bring it about. And they were the ones that had, gotten the money together, have watched it from day to day. And so I'm very proud of them. This was a labor of love of many, many people, but in particular, many of the staff people that I work with that every day had to work on these items to make it happen. So I was very proud of them. I had to add that.
Oh, and of course, no, big props to all the people that were vital in making it happen. Well, in La Plaza tradition, of course, you weren't satisfied with just one opening. You also had a public opening just a few days later on April 16th. So here's a little screen share there of the grand opening where the public was invited to visit La Plaza.
Right.
And so here you see let me go back here. You get the people standing in line. If I could get to that, there you go. People standing in line to get in. A lot of media, I'm sure, showed up as people were looking at the exhibits. One hallmark of La Plaza is the interactivity, being able to view, being able to listen to stories, interact, and Calle Principal, Miguel, as you were saying, to touch objects, to be part of the environment that takes you back into history.
Absolutely. It was a really great feeling of having all of that. I really wanted to be touchable. I wanted it to really to go away and say, I'm going to come back here. This is my go-to location. And I think people really enjoy Plaza. And now, of course, the virtual programming is so very rich as well. And what we do for children, I mean, the Troca has a whole program that goes out to all the kids in the schools. We've developed such wonderful programming and so much more that's going to come because of the creativity of the leadership and the staff there today. It's outstanding.
Well, thank you. So today we're just going to take you to that moment because there's much more story to come as we are in our 10th year. We'll be bringing people to talk, staff and others to talk about what's going on in La Plaza now, as we've brought on and talked about our exhibitions, our current exhibition, Afro Latinidad, Mi Casa, My City. We had the curatorial team who put that together. We had our La Tienda staff talk about how we transitioned from a museum gift store to now an online service, as during the pandemic, these young ladies who learned the technology and now we're an online retailer as well. So thank you so much for joining us tonight. I'm just gonna read some of the comments here on Facebook because we had quite a response from Bob Burden. Especially you, Gloria, and Angie Castro welcomed me, as I said before, to paraphrase paraphrase, I felt like I returned home. Thank you for your vision and hard work. So who's Bob Burden? Berdin.
I'm not sure. Miguel?
No, I don't know.
I don't know,
Alright.
but I'm very pleased with these comments. But Angie Castro was a critical part of it, and it's probably, Angie's really good at bringing people in and making them a part of it. Not only make them feel at home, but also to be a part of it and make a contribution. So I'm glad he enjoyed it, and we love Angie as well.
Oh yes, and we do too. She now leads the East Side Arts initiative, which is also a La Plaza initiative, funding artists and arts organizations through the endowment. Right now, we do have till March 30th our second COVID relief campaign, where artists and arts organizations could apply for emergency funding for income loss during the pandemic. So go to eastsideartsinitiative.org and find out more about it. You have until March 30th, 5 o'clock, to put in your grant application. From Isabel Rojas Williams, what a fabulous team. Gloria Molina, Miguel Santana. Thank you for all you do for our culture.
Gracias, Isabel.
Patricia Perez says, impressive Latina leaders. And I agree. And from a grateful public, thank you, Gloria.
Oh, that's nice. Thank you, Pat.
All right. So Santos Trainee, when we were speaking about our identity, how important this is to our community, to learn more about our community, not just us, but for the community at large to know more about the Mexican-American experience. Damn right, our identity is history. It's rooted here in LA, from the valley to the port. This is our tierra. You cannot give any stone or dirt to any nationality until we get ours. It takes leaders like Gloria. So thank you. This is from Santos Trainee.
Oh, how nice. Thank you.
Yeah, and Bob Burden, he's president of the Old Town La Puente Association, and they started an art walk. Yeah, there you go.
There we go. That's great. Thanks, Bob.
All right. Okay, well, any final thoughts, Miguel or Gloria?
Well, let me just say that I'm so proud of the staff and all of the people who support Plaza. It is a dream come true, and it's only going to get better and stronger every single day. And I also congratulate the staff, the people who are a part of it every single day. A lot of the young people, the creativity that's gone in. You've made me so very, very proud, honestly, very proud. And I'm glad to have been a founder, to have been a part of it. And I just really see it growing and being bigger all of the time. Now that we're doing virtual program, there's just no limit. We're even an online retailer, as you said. So there's great opportunity for so much of us. There's so much we want to share. We have a rich history, a rich culture. We have amazing leadership in our community. And these are stories that are not being told every single day. So I'm glad Plaza is there to do the heavy lifting that should be done by others today, to remind everyone of our wonderful contributions to the building of this megalopolis in Los Angeles. So thank you.
All right, thank you, Gloria. And Miguel?
So I think folks don't quite appreciate how incredibly visionary Gloria, Antonia, Esteban, Andrea Rich, the founding board members were, to insist that there be a place like this. Today, it's hard to imagine not having La Plaza. And as we're going this moment in time in our American history, where there's a racial reckoning that's taking place and people are examining sort of the legacy of racism in Los Angeles and throughout, in many ways, La Plaza was ahead of its time. You know, it was ahead of its time in that it was insisting on having a conversation about the contributions of our community in a way that simply having it made people uncomfortable. And when we were honest about the challenges that our community faced and the history, we're providing a source of truth and reconciliation for Los Angeles. And so I think we should all be very thankful for the leadership and the vision to insist that there be a place like this. And there will always be a need for this kind of storytelling that is honest, but at the same time celebratory of who we are as a community.
Thank you so much. Well, thank you so much to both you, Miguel and Gloria, for all the work that you've done. Myself as a staff member of La Plaza, I'm very proud to be part of the team. We do work hard, but it's worth it because of the reaction and interactions that we get from the community when they're able to visit online as well, as Gloria was mentioning, not only with this program En Casa con La Plaza, but also our education program who does En Familia con La Plaza, which is our workshops that we normally do at La Plaza. They've been taken online. They premiere with a new workshop almost every Saturday on our YouTube channel.
Fabulous.
All right, so with that, I'd like to bid the both of you goodbye and hasta la próxima. And then thank our viewers out there for joining us today on En Casa con La Plaza. Before I end, just a couple announcements here. La Plaza has reopened. So we've been open now for about a month with a shortened schedule from Thursdays through Sundays, noon to 4. Go to our website at lapca.org for information on how to make reservations and do the health questionnaire. We're following all COVID protocol to make sure that you stay safe and our staff stays safe as well. If you're not able to make it during museum hours, we also have an exhibition that you could view from outside. It's called Only Light Can Do That. It's a neon art installation on our windows facing Main Street by Patrick Martinez. It's part of the LA County's Department of Mental Health. It's the We Rise initiative, which is bringing mental health awareness during the month of May. Though Mental Health Awareness Month ends the end of this month, the exhibition will continue until September. So if you go to our Instagram, our Facebook, you'll see a lot of nice photographs that have been taken by people passing by. It's quite something to see. And then finally, our public programming, which we're really proud of, begins this next Sunday with Molcajete Dominguero, our Latino tianguis that we co-sponsor. It'll be taking place on May 30th, excuse me, in our historic Paseo walkway. Also a new addition to La Plaza. And so that's it. Coming up on La Plaza, En Casa con La Plaza, tomorrow we have Yolanda Nava, one of the early board members
one of the
board members who will be talking about her book, which was recently published, called Through the Dark, in which she talks about her journey after losing sight in both eyes and how she overcame that and the spiritual journey of self-awareness and healing that she has been on since. So an incredible person. She's been our guest on En Casa before, so please join in tomorrow at 7 o'clock here on En Casa con La Plaza. And so with that, if you didn't catch this entire program, or if you want to see it again, go to our YouTube page at La Plaza LA, on our Facebook page at La Plaza LA, and also our website, lapca.org, to learn about all that's going on at La Plaza. So, de nuevo, nos vemos soon, Gloria.
Hasta luego, gracias. Thank you,
Abelardo.
You're welcome. Buenas noches a todos. Bye-bye.
Buenas noches.
Buenas noches. Adiós.